Yeah.
Soothes me.
Yeah. How you doing, everybody? My name is Luke.
And most people refer to me as Mark.
And this is the Friday Questions, but with no S this time. Questions.
I see. I did not see that coming. That was beautiful. Oh, we are off to.
I mean, that's not where I was going with it, but
questions.
in the moment, the dad joke came to my mind, and I was like,
I'm so jealous. I never thought of that before. That is so great. So great. I'm really proud of you right now. We've known each other a year plus, and I have never been more proud/impressed with you in my entire life.
because we only have one question this week, so.
And it's part 3 of our trilogy.
It's part 3 of our trilogy of questions.
Now, if this trilogy has been like most trilogies, episode 1 was really strong.
Mm-hmm.
Last week, would you say it was more of an Empire Strikes Back kind of sequel, or like most other sequels? Or like a Temple of Doom sequel where everyone's like, ooh, that was cringy.
You know, it was shorter. I think we hit a lot that first week, and so it was just shorter. I don't think
Which
it was
is crazy
cringy,
because
but
we expected to do a sequel and a trequel.
Yeah.
Most people like to put everything in that first movie and then, we should make a sequel because we made such good money on it. We knew better.
Yeah.
And still packed a lot in the first one.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, okay, well, here we are for...
all the good ideas went out that first week.
Yeah. Part 3, which usually is a redemption of some type of maybe what we didn't do well in the second one.
Yeah.
We'll see.
So this week is basically, how do I walk alongside somebody who either has questions, who has doubts, or is in the process of deconstruction. So I guess let's recap for anybody who doesn't want to go back and watch the other ones. Recap, I guess let's talk about briefly what deconstruction is, what deconstruction isn't, I guess along those lines.
One of the best things that we found that probably most articulates the wide spectrum of what quote-unquote deconstruction often is, because people have labeled lots of things, but a crisis of faith might be the most succinct, helpful way of thinking about it, because then it isn't just someone who maybe has a question. Like, we would hate you to think that when we ask you to send in questions every week,
that means
we're
you're
like
deconstructing
we're
your
promoting deconstruction. Like, yes, let us help you deconstruct. It's not that mild. It's also not, I am essentially shaking my fist at God, Jesus, and His church. And in other words, saying deconstruction doesn't always equal deconversion or leaving the church or abandoning
ideally
your
it
faith.
shouldn't.
No. In fact, healthy deconstruction creates a stronger faith on the backside because you reconstruct.
Yeah, and so I guess to what we talked about, we had kind of 3 generalizations for why people tend to go that route. Either something they were taught strongly, they learned that it's maybe not as strong of a thing as they thought it was, or maybe there's different interpretations of what that might be, and they think, well, wow, if they were wrong about that, what else are they wrong about? The second would be if you were hurt by the church, and the big one there was like maybe everybody pretends to have it all together, and you think, well, I don't have it all together, and I'm really struggling here. And then I find out, wait, these people are as screwed up as I am, but they pretend like they have it all together, and that leads to, well, if they're lying about that, what else are they lying about? And the third one is maybe you've put too much faith in a person, in a pastor, in a public figure, and then you realize, or that public figure has some kind of problem or falls in some way, and all your faith was in that person instead of God directly, and all 3, those are the 3 general areas that lead down a path of, wow, if that's that way, what else is? So that's kind of what leads to it. And then, now that I interrupted you, go ahead and finish your thought.
No, that was great, because you're pointing to oftentimes there is either an observation of hypocrisy,
Mm-hmm.
or there's a hurt. I know, especially with maybe our younger generations, they hear the way certain churches or certain people in churches speak about individuals or groups
Mm-hmm.
in a negative way, and then those young
society,
people,
that was the other one.
yeah, where they're like, wait a second,
Yeah.
I have friends who are struggling with this or have said that they are or they believe in this, and my church is just railing on them and just describing how they're all going to hell so quickly.
And they don't seem like such bad people.
Right, and I
Something
talk
along
with
those
them, and
lines.
so, yeah, so sometimes the church and people within church can depersonalize some of those issues, and then when, especially a younger person, Gen Z, they have friends or they have family or they have people they know that, see, they've personalized those situations. Now, sometimes you personalize the situation and then that makes you think that it's okay, and there's
Right.
going to be a balance there where,
Yeah, and we're making a generalization here. There's a lot of nuance in there. We're not making a blanket statement like, "Oh, all the church is all wrong, and these people are all right." We're not
so
saying that.
well, just an easy example, some low-hanging fruit would be a church that just comes down really hard and says, homosexuality is a sin, which
which we believe that it is.
but then and all homosexuals are going to hell, and
And they're
AIDS is
evil,
God's
and-
judgment, and
yeah.
all these things, and so now it becomes a lot of negativity towards anyone who might be within the LGBTQ community, and now you've got a younger person especially, or someone, typically it's people would be maybe 30s and under, but it could be someone of any age, who has friends or knows people or coworkers who live that lifestyle or would describe themselves that way, and now this person is thrust with this problem of, well, my church is really, really angry about you and negative toward you, but you're my friend, what do I do? And so oftentimes the result can be, well, I'd rather be with my friends than listen to my church yell about
Yeah,
it.
you guys actually seem a lot nicer than
Right.
that type of
right.
thing. So
So hypocrisy, being judgmental, all the things that get check marked. Sometimes people see those in the church. You appreciate you'd mentioned people are hurt by the church.
yeah,
Or they hitch their wagon to someone who turns out to be not the best person to follow. They're not very forthright, or there's a teaching that they teach that they say is core, but really maybe it's more peripheral. Yeah, so all
Yeah.
those things. So a person hits a crisis of faith, and it usually leads to questioning, wondering, confusion about, like, well, what do I really believe? And so now they're trying to untangle, and you got, like you mentioned, there's cultural stuff coming in, and personal opinions, and friends, and what your church teaches, and all this stuff. And so what we hope is that when someone deconstructs, they then reconstruct, regardless of whether they reconstruct well or not. Usually a person who deconstructs has a very different faith at the end
Right.
than they did at the beginning.
You would hope that it becomes a stronger faith, because if you truly look into it and you say, I mean, ideally you look into it and you realize, wow, I was trusting in somebody's interpretation of something, but as I look into it, I come to my own conclusions, not 100% just taking what somebody says as gospel.
Right. Yeah. And so because it's broad that way, and there are probably myriads of different reasons or situations or setups that would lead someone to maybe walk down this road. And, we could say deconstruction as a concept has been around forever, just the word has become more
Right.
popular. I think mostly because there was a wave there a few years ago where very popular, well-known social figures or
Yeah.
famous Christians came out on social media or wherever and said, I'm deconstructing, and here's why I'm doing this, and here's what I don't believe anymore, and
Yeah.
I just can't handle the church, and so on and so forth. So it the word became trendy because enough famous people talked
Yeah.
about it, and now books are being written and articles are being written about
But it's not
it.
really a new thing.
Not really. I mean, I think as long as you've had people who have been trying to follow Jesus, you've had people who have been disillusioned by the folks who follow Jesus. In fact, I just heard a message this last weekend. I was listening to it Sunday night, and
Was
they
it
were
yours?
No, it was not. That's so narcissistic. So I listened to this really cool guy this weekend. Man, the way he handles blue liquid is just out of this world.
If you
No,
don't know
it
that
was-
reference, you should watch Mark's teaching.
It
from
was
this
someone
past week.
else, someone a much better communicator than me, who mentioned that following Christians is not a core part of the Christian faith.
Right.
Not that we're giving Christians a pass, but his point was that if you are wrapping your entire Christianity in how you observe Christians, you're missing the whole point,
Right.
and you're going to be disappointed.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
always will.
Because our comparison, we're not to compare ourselves to the person next to us, because that's easy to find somebody who we think is lesser than we are and be like, I'm doing all right.
Yeah.
The comparison is between us and Jesus.
Yes.
And in that comparison, we always lose.
Yeah.
So
Which is why we've said in multiple places here or weekend teachings that we're always trying to point people back
Yeah.
to Jesus.
yeah.
I think we should, if we're smart, we would admit, yes, there are times when Christians desperately fail to be like Christ. And we make mistakes intentionally or unintentionally. We're sinful, fallen creatures. There's nothing special about us. What's
Right.
special or who's special is Jesus. And
Yeah.
that can diffuse a lot of things. So we started making a list of just some of the little tips, or sometimes it's things you can say, or just a posture or a
Yeah.
way of thinking that, if I would say, even if you yourself find a moment where you're thinking through and deconstructing, and we've said how that can be healthy to a certain extent, where you really think through what's core to my faith and what isn't. But we're thinking more of like, if you know someone who has either announced it or you can tell that they're having a difficult time.
And I guess just to point out, there's nothing inherently wrong. Don't beat yourself up if you have a belief of a specific thing because you were taught it growing up. I mean, we all have them, and we all want to trust what we're being taught. But everybody has flaws and everybody has faults, and there are a myriad of topics which there's differings of opinions on. So the church that you might have grown up in had a specific thought on this. Just because they had a specific thought on something and they taught that, it doesn't mean they're a bad church or that they're wrong or anything like that. It's that's not what we're trying to say. So
Yeah.
caveat done.
Yeah, good point. Okay, so let's just kind of kick a few of these around, and we can elaborate on them if we want. We've already kind of hit on a few of these, but
Yeah.
the first one, and I think this is super important for us to remember, because oftentimes Christians, we tend to panic.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, something that I would say for the conclusion, I'm gonna hit it right off the top, and that is, God does not seem to have a problem when people question him and doubt him. So why do we?
Right.
And so maybe we
He's
need
secure.
we need to not be so DEFCON 1 with everything, like, oh my goodness, the sky is falling, or I can't believe it's happening. And so the first one is to recognize that not all deconstruction leads to deconversion.
Yeah.
And so the first thing probably is to just not panic. I think especially probably the situation that would happen most naturally is if you're a parent and
Now-
your child, student, even your adult child, comes along and like announces that they're done with Christianity.
Now, just to clarify, have we now started on the because we were recapping before? Are we now on the how to walk with somebody?
That's where I had started
Okay,
ahead.
yeah,
Are you
so-
okay with that?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
clarify. Now we're on new topic.
Well, how do you walk with someone, or how
Yeah.
how should we react to and deal with
Yeah.
the whole deconstruction thing?
Yeah.
And so step one is
Don't
let's
overreact.
not overreact. Let's not panic. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to deconvert.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you've been, especially if you're a parent, you're not a failure as a parent. But even if it's a friend, even just, I don't know if Nathan has shared any of this with you, but I know that even Luke and Emily, the two kids that grew up in our household, they have friends. And again, part of it is sometimes when you go to a Christian school and you just kind of play the game and then you get on your own, kind of like, freedom. But they could, they've mentioned individuals they know of that are friends of theirs that are now
Don't go to church.
yeah, and they
or-
don't really care about Christianity anymore, and maybe they've even denounced it. They've made declarations and
Right.
post things and that kind of stuff. I know that for Melissa and I, even when maybe those names have come up in our household, or we've talked about some of those people, we work really hard to not like overreact. Oh my goodness, well you can't be friends with them anymore.
Right.
In fact,
Right.
you need to be deeper friends with them. You need to friend them harder than you did before.
Yeah.
Because you may be the one
What was the
thing
complaint
that
against
tethers
Jesus?
them.
Jesus
Yeah.
hung around with sinners.
Yeah, exactly. And so
That's when they need you more.
Yes, yes. And I can even think of a few situations where our kids have told us, yeah, no one really is friending them anymore. Like everyone who was in our friend group has kind of left them. And we've kind of given them suggestions like, well, then you really need to like lean into your friendship even more so, because they desperately need to be tethered to someone who can help them see real Jesus. And I appreciate that our kids have done that, and it can't be easy. But even so, whatever situation you're in, if this gets announced to you, or you're recognizing it, or you read a social post, boy, the last thing you want to do is overreact, panic, and then like say something inflammatory in response. So that's the first one. The second thing then kind of
especially because if somebody is going through a struggle or is having doubts and you come down hard on them, that's not going to make them think, oh, maybe I was wrong. That's going to immediately tell them, okay, I was right. These people are scumbags.
Yeah.
And I don't need to listen to them.
Wow.
Everything my friends told me was right because of their reaction. And it's not that you got to tiptoe and, oh, I can't say something is wrong. I can't do this. It's not that. But it is love and grace, or truth and grace.
Right.
There has to be grace that comes with the truth. If it's all truth, it's like bringing the word of God to bear. That doesn't mean to take your Bible and...
Right. No one's ever been verbally berated into following Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, you yelling at me about this makes me want to follow him even more so.
Grace
and
screaming
truth
is really...
Wow, you're making some good points as
brought
that
new-
vein pops out of your head the way it only does when you get really mad. Yeah. Yeah, grace and truth is obviously, sometimes I use the phrase, I think I even mentioned a few weeks ago, the idea of clarity and compassion. So I'm very clear about what I believe, but I'm compassionate to you as a person.
Yeah.
Sure, yeah. Okay, so that's the first one.
Yeah.
Good points. Second, then, and this is, again, we've said this in a variety of venues, but be a listener and not a talker so much.
Yeah.
You'll have times to share, but the biggest thing at the beginning is to listen, hear their story if you're not familiar with it, listen to where their concerns are, be a sounding board. Because, again, there's no reason for us to panic and to try and, we need to verbally take over this situation and talk them off the ledge. In many ways, I've even seen some people verbally process and quickly reconstruct because they're given a forum where they can just talk it out, think it out. Sometimes people say things out loud, and it helps them realize, oh, that's not true, or, oh, that takes me here.
I had somebody once, they were like, oh, I quit my job. And I was like, oh, why'd you do that? And they said it, and they were like, well, it made a lot more sense when I was thinking about it earlier. It's like, but now that I've said it out loud,
I wonder if I can get my job back.
I've made a terrible mistake. And sometimes just going through that process. Some people are verbal processors. Some people want to sit there and think about it, and to just be that again. And again, listening gives you an understanding of where they're at.
Yes.
Because so many times the first thing out of their mouth might just be the tree, the leaves, or the branches of something. And the more they talk, the more they're going to dig down to the root of what's really there. And so don't get so caught up in the weeds. They're like, well, what about this? Oh, well, let me address every single concern. But you haven't even touched the root down here that's really the problem. So listening gives you understanding to understand what the core issue that they're dealing with is.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. Because oftentimes it's symptoms that are first talked about. It's not the real reason why. That takes some time to peel those layers back. Yeah, good. So along with that, listening also that involves empathy. Mm-hmm. So again, can I really get into the shoes of this person and get a sense of I now understand and I feel what they feel.
Right.
even if I disagree, but I can feel what they feel, and I can see the world through their eyes, and at least I can create. There's a phrase they use. So have you ever heard of like when someone makes a straw man argument?
Yeah.
Straw man argument is when you make an argument out of straw, meaning like I pretend I know about their points as to why they believe what they believe, and I don't really. So the opposite of that would be make a steel man argument, which is I listen and figure out all of the strengths of their arguments and like give them the benefit of the doubt, like, oh, I can see why they're saying this.
Right.
And then if I get the opportunity to communicate back to them, hey, I can really see why you think this. And in fact, you may even add a little bit to their, have you thought this, this, and this? You give credibility to their thoughts, and then they're more open to hear wise counsel that comes along maybe afterwards. And so when we get defensive or, if we get sarcastic, like as much as I like sarcasm, and I know it's not always wise, but it's really bad
always
to be
fun.
It is, but it's perhaps the number one place to not be sarcastic is when.
All right, battery swapped. You didn't see anything.
Oh, yeah. All right. Another thing that can be super helpful is just even recognize how just how untrustworthy many people who are deconstructing feel about other Christians, especially Christians in authority. I shared with Luke earlier today, I came across this statistic that came from, I think, from Barna Research. 52% of regular church attenders, so these are people who regularly attend church, over half, 52%, stated that they really don't consider pastors to be trustworthy. And
it's a pretty bad statistic.
And only 25% of non-church attenders. So 1 out of every 4 non-church attenders believe that they're trustworthy, and over half of church attenders say, no, they're not trustworthy.
Yeah.
So if you try to come across as authoritative, this got to be careful here because
don't question.
You probably have some intellect in some things, or you can go find some ways to answer these things. But again, it's your approach. How do we come across as, oh, you need here these 3 things, and boom, done. Your deconstruction. Do we take care of that? Moved it on. It's much like if you go to visit your doctor and you think you have something very seriously wrong with you, and they're like, well, it's this, this, and this. Take a couple of these pills and you're fine. And you're thinking to yourself, I don't know if you're being completely honest with me, and it feels like you're a little trite.
Yeah.
And you don't really care. Again, this is a long process. You know, some people deconstruct for months or years, and are we willing to kind of walk that road with them? So kind of be more of a guide. Lots of times I try to just point people to, hey, here's an article or here's a book. When you get the chance, you should read this. You may not agree with it, but I think it might be helpful. And again, that attitude of I want to walk alongside you, not I want to fix your problem for you, I think is more, you're going to be more accepted by the person, and you'll be there for them when they do begin to really hit rock bottom.
Yeah. Not only that, but they'll if you've been there with them as a support instead of a hindrance, then they're more likely to come back to you for that help as they you
want to keep that door open.
Yeah.
And again, you're not compromising. You are keeping lines of communication open so that when maybe their crisis bottoms out or something else comes along, and now suddenly it's amazing how people who don't want anything to do with faith, but something bad happens and they go find someone who is a person of faith, they go find a Christian, and they find a religious person, and they're like, would you pray for me?
Yeah. Because being supportive, there's a difference between saying, I can understand why you think that, is not the same thing as saying, well, you're right. And, so many times people think to be supportive, you have to say, oh, you're right about that, and I can't do that. Being supportive doesn't mean saying, I agree with what you say, but being able to empathize and say, I can understand how you came to that place. That's very different, because understanding how they came to that place allows you to say, here was a time when I struggled with something similar, and this is what helped me. That's very different than being an ear for somebody, being there for somebody does not mean approving
Right.
or
Yeah.
agreeing with what they believe.
Yeah, we can
So-
accept them without affirming or
Exactly.
agreeing with
Yeah.
that, and be very upfront about that. But
Yeah.
in a
Yeah.
way that keeps them in the conversation.
Yeah.
And then the only other thing that I thought of that would be super helpful is when the time is right to be very transparent with them and help them walk back to, well, this really is what Christianity,
Right.
at its core, what it means to be a follower of Jesus, and whether they allow you to use Scripture or not, but you can talk through. And so maybe you even help them begin to peel away the layers of peripheral things that maybe need to have an opinion on, and they may be important to our faith, but if we take them back to the core,
Yeah.
bring them back to this is what it really means to be a quote-unquote Christian, then that may help them see that what they're really fighting against is what you're fighting against.
Yeah.
Like, we probably have similar things that we need to disengage and jettison out away from what is authentic Christianity. And when they see that you're willing to do that with certain things, then maybe they're more willing to listen to you as you bring them back to, yeah, this is what it really means. And yeah, a lot of people get it wrong, and a lot of churches add things in, and we keep dumping things into the core. We get that. So maybe what you're deconstructing is the things that aren't necessarily crucial to be a Jesus follower, and if that's the case, well done.
Yeah.
That's what you should be doing.
Yeah.
And then we can begin to maybe reassemble some things that are important, but now that we've started with the core, we're back to a good foundation that then we can be tethered to in a positive way, and not everything that's wrong with Christians in the church.
And how much it feels like there's a wide variety of symptoms, and most of them lead to a very small number of core root problems.
Right.
A sense of value, a sense of acceptance, a sense of worth, but that's really value. I feel like so much comes down to a sense of acceptance and a sense of value. I mean, why are there so many disparate groups of things? It's people searching for acceptance. That's like, oh, I finally found people that agree with me. I mean, so many people are searching for community and hope, acceptance and value.
Yeah, yeah. I once heard it said, the two fundamental questions we care about the most: who am I? Whose am I?
Yeah, yeah.
And that's that idea of acceptance and understanding my value, and who's my people, who's my community. And yeah, and so for some, they have not discovered that in the version of Christianity they've experienced, and so they're looking for other places.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
to help, to give them a true picture of what it is to be a Jesus follower,
Yeah.
and what a true Jesus following community can be. It struggles to be, but it can be.
Yeah.
And even pointing them to the fact that one day it will be.
Yes.
Like that.
Yeah.
This is what the future is for us. We're going to try to figure it out now, and we're hopefully letting the Holy Spirit mold us and shape us to become this kind of biblical community that follows Jesus. But how exciting is it to know that one day it's coming?
Yeah. 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 So, yeah, that's how you walk through somebody. The definitive answer on how you walk through you walk alongside
You don't
somebody.
need to go anywhere else
We've
and
told
listen to
you
anyone else.
all the truth that you need, except what we say without question.
Because when we speak with great authority, that doesn't chase anyone off. Oh, see, we're being sarcastic again. Sorry, sarcasm doesn't work. It's funny, but it doesn't really work. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So continue to send in your questions. We didn't have a lot of questions this week. I blame Father's Day. It's the only day we get off, so
No dads had to think last Sunday.
yeah.
Including me.
What do you want for Father's Day?
Including
a nap.
you. We actually helped put on a couple of church services Sunday, but it was Father's Day, so we didn't really have to think.
Yeah, yeah,
I don't know if you guys caught that, if you were here or not.
yeah.
Anyway, okay, we're rambling.
All right. Well, send in your questions. We will see you next week. Well, Mark won't see you next week. He's going on vacation. But maybe I'll be here. Maybe I'll replace Mark next week with somebody. We'll see.
Yes.
Same bat time, same bat channel, different bat co-host,
Different Robin.
different Robin. I
'Cause
mean,
you're
I was
Batman.
I was going to
You're
say that
Batman.
I was Robin.
You're
but,
Batman.
maybe we're both Robins.
All right. We'll see you
All
later.
right. See you next week.